Hello.
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing good.
That's good. Hold on,
Real good.
okay, hold on. You were at 200%, and it sounded like you were eating something, but now it's good. Okay, can you say something now?
Yeah, I can say something.
Okay,
Is that better?
perfect. Just so you have an idea of how loud this must have been, I feel sorry for everyone on stream, but like you were on 200% when I started, and you were like peaking, you were on the red, and now when I turned you back to 100%, you were still peaking. So
Uh,
I'm sorry for the people in chat. I will not pay for your hearing aids, unfortunately.
I was hoping to peak tonight, so that's good.
Hell yeah, that's what we're looking for. All
Yeah.
right. So do you want to start by introducing yourself?
Well, yeah, I'm behind a pseudonym, so that's Playborstel. And for the rest, well, I've been on the stream 2 times now. I'm the
The two
teacher.
time. Yep.
Yeah, so this is my third time.
Yeah. Damn.
And I'm a teacher. I teach civics and I teach philosophy, which also accounts for my interests.
Mhm.
And I'm politically active. I'm active in a political party. I'm also active in solidarity networks in the Netherlands. So a bit of the left wing and a bit of the middle.
Yeah, nice. Sounds good. I've had you on a couple of times. I think the first time was this conversation I had long ago about social democracy, and since then I've become a lot more favorable of social democracy. So you were ahead of the game on that one. And then a debate that I moderated actually between two Dutch teachers, and you were one of said Dutch teachers as well, which is also going to be here now. So yeah,
Oh, yeah. All
yeah.
right. So we didn't really set an agenda for this talk, so you have to guide me through it. So I've prepared, well, not a whole lot,
Mm-hmm.
but make sure you interject and you ask the questions that you want to know, so I sort of know where you want to go with this.
All right. Yeah, so I think there were three main things that sort of came up. The first thing was that in the first discussion I had with a person learning politics, I think like a month or so ago, we discussed Dutch politics, and you said that you were kind of iffy on some of the things that were said there, so that can something we can be talking about. Second thing was the recent protests, very big protests that occurred for housing reform in Amsterdam not that long ago. So yeah, that's another thing. And then thirdly is the fact that the next state budget would be revealed now on Tuesday, I believe, or maybe next Tuesday. So that's the third thing. So those three things are sort of kind of like what we had in mind. You can pick between the three of them, do all three, or do whatever you're prepared for, I guess.
Yeah. So the first topic, the first person that talked, I mean, it was serviceable, but the only thing that I sort of took, well, issue is a big word, but it gives a bit of a warped perception. When it was a she, I believe,
Mhm.
when she said that something about trans healthcare is the second biggest issue in the Netherlands right now, which I wouldn't say is the case at all right now.
Mhm.
That's not something that's being talked about in the news at all. And that can have all kinds of systemic explanations, but could also be that it's just not that big of an issue in Dutch politics at the
Mhm.
moment. We're mostly talking about the outgoing cabinet, because I'm not sure how familiar you are, but this cabinet that's currently ruling the Netherlands is an outgoing cabinet.
Mhm.
It it sort of stopped ruling due to a huge scandal involving systemic racism
Oh.
and bureaucracy. So that,
Just so you have an idea of kind of like where I'm at. Explain everything like I'm 5 years old. So yeah, go with that. Talk about so what happened with this outgoing cabinet? This
yes,
scandal? Yeah.
yeah. So that there was a scandal because the Dutch government gives allowances for childcare. What
Mhm.
happened is they wanted to stimulate parents leaving their kids with people they know and paying those people that they know an allowance for doing that, basically stimulating people to go to work.
Mhm.
That was the idea. And the way they structured this allowance was it was very easy to commit mild fraud with that, meaning you just drop the kids off at the grandma, and
Oh, I
grandma
see.
asks for this allowance and gets paid all in the order of 500 euros a month for taking care of their grandchildren.
Yeah.
And so since that fraud came to light, they immediately started clamping down completely on everybody who had this child allowance. And basically, they went through very small calm through all the appliances, mainly with people with exotic sounding surnames, leading to them finding out that there were all kinds of little mistakes in the appliances for this allowance with the foreign people. Now, the normal explanation that any sane person would give is basically, well, you don't speak the language, you make a small mistake asking for a certain allowance, right? But all these people were fined, usually in the order of tens of thousands of euros. Naturally, they couldn't pay for this. And people's lives got ruined. And when that came to light, well...
There was pushback, I can imagine.
There was pushback from Parliament.
I can imagine.
Pushback from Parliament, a vote of no confidence, and several leading politicians in the Netherlands stepped down, including our current Prime Minister. Stepped down from ruling, I might add. He's still aiming to rule next term, so that's kind of weird. Does that make sense? Does that follow?
Yep.
Can you follow along with that?
Yep. At least I can follow along so far. So there is an outgoing cabinet, and that's one of the major issues that is being discussed at the moment. And one of the principal reasons behind them being an outgoing cabinet is because they had a really large issue when it comes to the way that they handled certain the way that they handled abuse of like a government benefit, and the way that they handled it was very sort of like racially or xenophobically discriminatory, and because of that they caught a lot of flack from the Parliament, and now they're on their way up.
Exactly, and it's a great example of systemic racism because, of course, technically speaking, there is, of course, a chance that people with a foreign surname make mistakes. That's, of course, a matter of systemic racism when you frame these mistakes as fraud, and you find these people, and you act very unreasonable when they protest this. So, yeah. And another important issue there is that one of the parliamentarians who was in the lead of this is a Christian Democrat from the ruling party, but he got split off from that party, and there was a huge scandal where people in the cabinet, meaning the people who rule the Netherlands, wanted to actually sort of promote him away. This got leaked and led to, again, a huge debate and political crisis. This person, this Christian Democrat, Peter Omtzigt, his name, that's Peter in the Dutch spelling. Currently, he's being polled as just one parliamentarian for 25 seats. That doesn't sound like a lot, but we only have 150 seats. So
that is quite a bit. Yeah, exactly.
That's 1/6 of the parliament seats for one politician, and that would put him in as the second biggest party as an individual in the Netherlands right now. But currently, with this recent election result, he doesn't have the 25 seats, so he sort of hovers around this current formation of the outgoing cabinet. So that's happening right now. Funnily enough, and that's something interesting for leftists listening, the Socialist Party was also involved in this in getting the systemic racism out in the open, but they didn't get anything from this, electorally speaking. So that's kind of interesting.
Exactly. So I was going to ask you then, so because you believe that that there is like that the original sort of the original sort of list of like most important political issues is kind of skewed a bit. You would put the housing thing obviously number one, that's still sort of accurate, and then you would also put the outgoing cabinets and stuff. What more would you say sort of like a pressing issue in Dutch political discourse?
Yeah, definitely the housing crisis. That's the biggest one, and maybe as a third option, the structural problems with healthcare. It basically being way too expensive in the way it's currently organized. Recently read a report from the Scientific Council. Basically, they were stating that by 2050, 1/3 of the Dutch working population would need to work in healthcare for our current healthcare system to be to be feasible in its current structure.
There's actually a very similar thing like that in Sweden, whereby I think it was 2029, we need 500,000 new people to begin work within the welfare sector. Otherwise, we would need to, or like for it to function the way it currently does. And 500,000 people, just to put the context for a nation like Sweden, for that to work, then every single sort of like a kid that's in Sweden right now who entered the labor force between 2020 and 2029 would all have to exclusively work within welfare to solve that gap, and obviously that's not going to happen. So yeah, this was a report by the Swedish Landsting, which is sort of like a municipal structure, so to say, where they said that they need a lot more employment there. So I guess it's a thing that seems very common in some other European countries as well. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so those are the main problems. We have a huge democratic deficit. Like this current government has been accused of corruption and lobbying again and again. And right now, the current ruling government basically has won the previous election. But some people are calling out for new elections to be held, and other people are basically saying, well, maybe they can rule as a minority. But how that is supposed to work, I have no idea. Because, well, like I said, everybody is aiming for their seats right now. So we're currently at a impasse. Is that an English word?
So currently, the current government, what sort of ideological groups is it made up of at the moment? The outgoing one.
Good question. We've got left-leaning Christians, basically meaning socially they're a bit on the left. When it comes to the Christian side of things, they're actually quite conservative.
Like left-leaning economically and more conservative socially?
Yeah, definitely. So, for example, they would have gay conversion therapy be sort of allowed in school, not stimulated, but allowed. That kind of stuff. Then we have a Christian Democratic Party, which is not that Christian.
But you have a lot of Christians in government. Holy shit! Damn. Okay.
Yeah. The confessional side of things is actually the basis of most such politics. A lot of people tend to forget that. Almost always a confessional party in the government. What's interesting is they have one ideological tenet which is interesting. They want more local democracy, and one of the most strongest proponents of that is Peter Omtzigt, which I mentioned earlier. So that's the Christian side of our parliament. Then we have the sort of progressive liberals, neoliberals, they say 66, and then we have the more hardcore capitalist liberals, VVD. So we have two liberal parties and two Christian parties making up the current government.
I see. Okay. Yeah. Well, then the scandal of systemically racist treatment makes more sense given what I've just heard. So then, right now, the main issues would be the housing situation, the outgoing cabinet, and then healthcare at the moment.
That's right.
All right, great. Yeah, I guess that's a new list of 3 things there. Is there anything else particularly that you want to talk about or correct or amend or add more information on from that call, or was that the main thing? Sort of?
Well, I don't remember the call very thoroughly, so no, not really, to be
Not
honest.
the moment. I see.
She did a great job on all.
Yeah. So the housing protests that are going on. Maybe you could give a brief overview of the terrible situation of housing so far in the Netherlands, especially in the big cities.
You might have experienced that looking for a room in Amsterdam. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I did. For me, fortunately, though, I was able to get accommodation through channels provided to me from my educational institution. So I was fortunate, but I know a lot of people who weren't able to do that and then are really struggling with housing right now or living in not great housing situations because they didn't have a lot of options and stuff like that. So me personally, I didn't experience it too much because I got lucky in how my application was handled, and I was on top of the list to apply for housing because I was there on time and everything. But yeah, for a lot of people definitely that I know personally, they're having a lot of situations that are not great when it comes to who they're living with and the size of their accommodation and the rest of it. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, the main problem is, of course, the neoliberal policy and the capitalist policy that's running through that. Right now, the housing prices are really escalating, and what's happening a lot in the Netherlands is people buying up property and renting it out against more or less extortionate prices. And basically, most millennials and Generation Zs, they can no longer move upwards to living accommodations that are somewhat suitable for their needs. You know, a lot of 30 somethings still living in their student room, a lot of students living at their parents, and it's just stuck all the way.
Mhm. Let's see. So what would you
Uh,
say is like the main thing like causing this housing situation as it exists right now?
well, part of it is there's no strong enforcement on maximum prices that you're allowed to ask for social housing and student rooming, leading to extortionate rental prices.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the problem that social housing is being sold off because the VVD, the neoliberal party,
Mm-hmm.
decided to very heavily tax social housing corporations. Because we do have housing co-ops in the Netherlands,
Uh-huh.
but they can no longer stay afloat due to well, they can stay a bit afloat, but they're selling off a lot of property, especially in the most urbanized areas,
Mm-hmm.
due to tax rulings, due to them not being able to get the rent that they could get, and they basically decide to liberalize, as we call it in the Netherlands, their social housing properties. Top of that, we have gentrification going on, as I'm sure most people in Europe have going on.
Mm-hmm.
And well, the borders are open for outside capital, so there's also a lot of foreign investment flowing into the big cities, again, creating extortionate renting prices.
I see. So I think that another thing that was brought up or that's been circling around a bit is that particularly more for the bigger cities, especially like Amsterdam as a city, the fact that so much of the city is like cultural heritage and therefore, you know, the types of rebuilding or like demolition and new building that you can do there is fairly limited. Do you believe that that's like a significant part to play in any of this, or do you think that's like, oh, it probably contributes a bit, but it's not something that should be like in the focus or that really needs to
Yeah.
be looked into?
I wouldn't say in the focus. I wouldn't say in the focus because you can alleviate it by just having less extortionate housing prices. So one of the main problems is most people do want to move to a more decent place, giving room, for example, for social housing,
Mm-hmm.
for students and people who need social housing. But what you see a lot of is people getting a proper job, but staying in social housing because going into the free sector, as we call it in the Netherlands, the part of the market that is free, you would see a price hike of about 3 times the rent that you're paying in social housing. And that's usually about 70 to 80% of your income
Mm-hmm.
uh, gone to
And this
housing.
is with the very heavy taxation that the neoliberal party put on, right?
Well, yeah, the taxation is just something that the co-ops pay, so
Okay.
it's not being put
It's not.
down to the people actually renting it, but
Mm-hmm.
it makes it so that the co-ops sell off the properties that they have.
I see.
That's the problem.
I see. So yeah, so from what I understand at the moment, then, um, so typically things like policies in relation to rent control don't seem to don't seem to have the desired effect in a lot of situations.
Yeah,
But you mentioned the lack of like a rent control in the form of a price ceiling on the prices of certain accommodations as like one of the key factors causing this. So do you believe that the situation for rent control is like different here in the Netherlands, or like what are your thoughts on that?
yeah, it's changing a lot thanks to the blooded liberals actually.
Mm-hmm.
So what they're doing is the rent controls are being alleviated for most properties. That's one aspect of it, and then the kind of contracts that you get to give to people that you rent out your property to are being liberalized as well. So what you see nowadays is people getting contracts for 1 year or 3 years, and in that situation, you can't really escalate legally when it comes to your housing price because if you have a 1 year contract, by the time your procedure starts, that usually takes about 7 8 months.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you
Yeah, I
know
see.
what's coming. They're not going to extend your contract if you try anything funny. So
Yeah, I see.
yeah,
True. Yeah, so you would basically say that, hey, as like one part of like the puzzle in solving the housing situation in the Netherlands, some level of rent control or some level of price ceiling could probably be beneficial in this regard, especially when we see like the scarcity that exists at the moment.
exactly.
So
Yes.
what would the one of the most like more sort of like positive in the sense of like more like proactive or like doing something policies in this regard be more investment into social housing, or do you believe it has most to do like with right now with like changing the like the legal frameworks and the taxing and the codes here and there in order to allow for like like more like privately sort of like organic, so to say, like growth of the housing markets? Or do you think it's a mix of the both, or like how would you
It's both. It should be both. So there are a
Mhm,
couple of demands that the protest put forward. One of them is the creation of a new ministry of housing.
mhm,
Used to be there in the 70s. It's no longer there. It's one of the demands. The other one is stronger enforcement and tighter grip on those actual prices, rent control. Uh,
mhm,
Third aspect of it is, well, to stop certain projects surrounding gentrification, because a lot of poor people and people of color are being pushed out of the city, and making sure that, well, this is going to sound really right wing, but close the border for outside capital,
mhm.
because those buy up a lot of ground too.
And
And when it
contribute
comes to
towards like
building,
gentrification and the rest of it as well, right?
yeah.
Mhm,
When it comes to building, well, there's one big problem in the Netherlands, and that is that we have a huge agriculture area. Maybe that's a
mhm.
different chapter in this segment, but apparently building activity releases a lot of nitrogen. And right now, our soil is rapidly declining due to nitrogen, and we can no longer build without ruining the ecosystem.
Yeah, so you told me about this. So it seems like the Netherlands has some form of like goal when it comes to sustainable releases of certain sort of substances into the environment, and nitrogen is one of those substances. And
Yeah.
because so much of that like nitrogen sort of like reserve or like pull from much nitrogen is allowed to be let out into the environment is taken up by agriculture, it can be a limitation factor on building housing as well, because certain housing practices and building and maintenance practices require some level of release of nitrogen into the environment. So that's also one of the things that are
Yeah.
holding back housing developments. Is this more or less correct from what I've understood?
Exactly right. And this also harkens back to the fact that the Netherlands are a huge exporter of agriculture.
Mm-hmm.
The Christian Democratic Party that I just mentioned, most of their voters are agricultural producers. And we're also dealing with a sort of a populist agitation from the agricultural groups in a different populist party.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there are some parties who want to build off our agricultural production,
Mm-hmm.
but that leads to a lot of heavy protesting.
I see. So one of the things that was actually mentioned in the last talk I had when it comes to the housing situation was that the guest said something along the lines of that, hey, most of the politicians and the parties like agree on what needs to be done, but they don't do it. Is this true? Is it not? And if it is true, then what is the reason behind not there not being like more action taken towards resolving the housing situation?
Well, I don't completely agree. So that tax that makes the co-ops sell off their properties,
Mm-hmm.
that probably has had its longest shelf life. However, in the newly released budget, the one that leaked, they only want to cut back the tax a tiny little bit, so they're already breaking their promise
Mm-hmm.
there. Furthermore, there's a lot of controversy around squatter rights. Some left wing parties want to give squatters certain rights, especially when property is not being used, while the VVD, the most important party in the Netherlands, is adamantly against squatting of any kind.
Mm-hmm. I see. Okay, yeah. So it seems like there is, it's like one of the things that is like optically great to do to say like, oh, this needs to be done for to solve the housing situation in the Netherlands. But then when it comes down to actually resolving the situations, such as like in the budget and stuff like that, we see that these parties aren't delivering on their promised sort of like proposals or solutions towards these issues.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. And I do think that squatters can put a lot of pressure on the market
mhm.
to make sure that space is being used properly. And I think that's personally a bit of a missed opportunity because you can't solve these issues with just being good and decent. Sometimes you just gotta take your rights.
Yeah, so basically what you're telling me is I should pack up my computer shit and then set up in some random house and stream from there instead.
Yes,
That'll be
yes.
interesting. You know, we can get a new backdrop every stream. Maybe that'll be more engaging, so to say. Um, but what do you think are like the main reasons behind why this is something that's like all the parties are say that they're gonna do, but then when it actually comes down to it, like in like a budget, it doesn't seem to be reflecting there. Do you know what the like what maybe some of the key things holding them back there or?
Well, so when it comes to building, there's a consensus that that would be very useful. But
Mhm,
then, for example, when it comes to the Christian Democrats and also the VVD for some to some extent, in order for us to build more houses, we would have to do less agriculture,
mhm,
which is a huge financial asset in the Netherlands. I think we're the second largest exporter in absolute terms in the
mhm.
world, and we're a super tiny country.
Yeah.
Uh, so that's holding them back: financial interest, electoral interest. So you can't really build, and I think some parties just also don't really mind letting the market run free when it comes to rent.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I think that's an ideological aspect of it.
Okay, I see. Yeah, so in response to all of these issues that you know are occurring when it comes to housing in the Netherlands, when they seem to be most like most issues in regards to housing, most enunciated in like larger cities like Amsterdam, for instance. There is also, as a result of that, a large portion of like protests and organizations that try to have some form of like influence or at least give people an opportunity or like a place to express their discontent with the way that the situation is unfolding at the moment. And one of these was a very big protest that occurred last Sunday, was it, or was it Saturday or Sunday?
I
Um,
think it was Sunday.
Sunday in Amsterdam, and it's one of the largest groups that talk about the housing issues in the Netherlands as a whole. And yeah, should we talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. What do you want to know? I immediately put forward their demands already. I think I myself was there.
Mm-hmm.
Also had a little cat and mouse game with the police back when some squatters. I wasn't one of them. Not
Mm-hmm.
one of the squatters tried to squat a building in the Amsterdam center.
Mm-hmm. I
Yeah,
see.
it was a pretty good protest. Lots of good representation.
Mm-hmm.
Also some left loonies that needs to be said as well.
Yeah. So what's the name of this organization then, so we can so people can look it up.
I'll send you the link. So it's basically really uninspiredly called One Protest,
Mm-hmm.
which is uh, protest, and I call round about I think 300 different organizations are involved with that, running the gamut from some direct action groups, political
Mm-hmm.
parties, teacher unions, student unions, all kinds of other organizations of various political coloring.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, running the gamut from liberals all the way to anarchists. There are also some groups that aren't mentioned on the site that had heavy representation. So, yeah, pretty big network of groups.
BreadTube is listed as one of the people supporting the organizations.
That's true.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, all right, fair enough. Um, yeah, okay. So typically, if you were to, I know you already sent this to me privately, but if you were to like summarize their main sort of like demands or what they're trying to accomplish, that would also be great.
Yeah, what they're trying to accomplish is have the government take the lead when it comes and the lead responsibility in making sure everybody has affordable housing. That is the goal. Um, and there are various things they want to do with that. They want to have a specific ministry. They want to have better control on the rights of investors so that they no longer can extort people. They want to have stronger enforcement on rent control. They want to make sure that there's legal room for squatting when investors don't develop or use ground and buildings that they buy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, want to stop the demolishment of social housing,
Mm-hmm.
which happens a lot. Social housing is being demolished and mixed projects are put in place. Usually, a couple of houses for yuppies, and then 20 buildings for the token black people living there.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the main demands. Four of them.
I see. Yeah, that sounds pretty good. I didn't attend that one specifically, but if there's another one coming up soon, then I probably will attend
There is.
future ones. Oh, and when is
There
that?
is.
Perfect. Excellent segue.
17 October in Rotterdam.
Oh yeah, yeah. Obviously, I actually knew about that protest, but I was saying it to give you the opportunity to come in and
Exactly.
let everyone else know. Obviously, I'm.
So 17 October in Rotterdam. They're going to
Mhm,
hit The Hague after that. Those are the
mhm.
three ones coming in. There's
Okay.
also the donation page. Now, listen, I'm not affiliated with these people. I'm not in the organization or anything like that. But I'll share the donation page. Maybe you can share it around for people who would like to support such protest movements, um, which I just did.
Hmm. All right, perfect. And this is the GoFundMe page for the organization. 35K. That was pretty good.
Yeah.
I will drop both links to the original website and to the GoFundMe in my chat at the moment, and they will also be linked in the description of the video when I end up making that. Um, but yeah, I mean that pretty well sums up for the housing situation at the moment, and like protests that exist. Yeah, about it. Is there anything else you want to add specifically on this specific question?
No, not really. Just a token. Squatting will continue, shouting and all that stuff.
Hmm. I see. All right, excellent. So last thing that we had on the itinerary. How do I say that? Do you know
I
what I'm
think
talking
you
about?
did a great job.
What's the word? Itinerary? Is that how you say it? It, yeah, hold on.
Itinerary?
Itinerary.
Itinerary, allegedly,
Uh,
according to the Google speaker thing. Um, yeah, was the new budget
oh yeah.
that's well, you said something about it being leaked, but it was supposed to come out. Is it this Tuesday? And what are we looking for there? What do we think? And yeah, what's going on?
Well, as is the tradition in the Netherlands, everything leaks
Oh, I see.
4 days until it's supposed to become public. Well, it's an outgoing cabinet, so they're not allowed to do officially not allowed to do a whole lot.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, the election results were such that the outgoing is also the ingoing cabinet
Mm-hmm.
for all extended purposes. So they decided to call for some extra money for some crises that
Mm-hmm.
are happening in the Netherlands. Well, one of them is quite obviously, and that's the climate crisis.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure how familiar you guys are with the Uganda ruling, which made international news. It's a ruling in the Netherlands.
I have not heard about it, so feel free to explain. I mean, sorry, obviously I know about this, but for the uneducated people in chat, maybe you could explain.
Yeah. The Uganda ruling is a ruling of the group Uganda, which is a climate protest movement against the Dutch state. They basically sued the Dutch state, saying that they are not fulfilling their what's the word constitutional obligation to take care of the interests of future generations. And this
Hmm.
organization won.
Oh shit!
That's,
Okay, damn.
yeah, they did.
Let them
And
go.
this is thanks to the efforts of a man that everybody should look up, and that's Roger. And his surname is really easy to remember,
Hmm.
Roger Cox.
Okay.
Roger Cox. He's a lawyer, and he did great work in this trial, and he sued the Dutch government successfully.
Is it?
And so,
Do you think you can write the name in the chat?
yeah, sure. That's
Once.
Roger. Like
All
that.
right. Okay. I spelled it a different way, so it's a good thing that I asked you. All right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So due to this, they're gonna invest heavily in subsidies for well businesses to make the transition to a more sustainable energy infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be some investments in the Dutch infrastructure in general,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, right, but only 6.8 billion, which I think is a bit modest.
Mm-hmm.
Just to give
So.
you an impression, for the order of magnitude, the
Mhm.
whole budget runs about 360 billion. So 6.8 out of 360.
It's
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 going
uh it's a decent amount. I don't know how much like the breakdown is there. Like what's the biggest sort of like I suppose budget allocation bracket there, and how much is it? Because it's possible that like 6 billion is actually really big and the rest are just like a bunch of like 1 and 2 billion things. So like, do you know kind of what that
uh,
looks like?
Yeah, I have it right in front of me. The biggest one is Social Security and the labor market, running at 94 billion.
I see. Okay, so it is. Yeah, it's a like you said, it's a modest investment there. Um, but
Second
this
biggest
is
is, of course, healthcare.
healthcare, yeah, and that's something that needs to be reformed, from what I've understood. So this was actually really interesting what you mentioned. So it was some climate activists suing the Dutch government and winning when it comes to issues in relation to climate change. Do you believe
Yeah.
there's something unique within like a Dutch constitution that allows them to do this, or do you think that this could like spur, or that the similar activity could be done in a bunch of other nations as well to achieve similar outcomes?
So Roger Cox is aiming to do just that. His claim is that it's not unique for the Netherlands, and that this precedent that the Netherlands have set might make it that other high courts make the same rulings based on this ruling,
Mm-hmm.
which is his hope and dream. I think they're hitting France right now, if I remember correctly.
Damn.
So yeah, I didn't prepare his GoFundMe, but for all those listening and interested, do look that man up and see how you can support him in his work. He does great work, and he just made Time's most influential people of the year. So
Oh
that's
shit.
happening too. So good for him.
Yeah, yeah, I mean that's doing really good job, like especially so there's like this is something that really interests me, which is like the extent to which you can try to like influence large political goals and aspiration you have from your like given, like a employment group or whatever. And as far as being a lawyer goes, fucking suing the states and getting them to change their budget on the basis of that is it's pretty good. It's pretty good,
Yeah.
so to say. So yeah, that was definitely very, very, very good to hear about, I guess. So what are some of the other major parts of the budgets that should be looked out for? And also, I have another question. So before we get to that, has this leaked budget been confirmed by the state, or they're just kind of like, you know,
Well, leaking in it's the national tradition. They're always 100% accurate, the leaks.
oh, okay, well, damn.
It's not been confirmed, but people have been making a sort of ritualistic poo pass about the leak.
I see. All right. Well,
So
so
it
the,
always
the the
goes.
official release is meant to be on Tuesday then.
Yeah, the
Um,
king will actually read it out loud for like 6 hours.
oh wow, Jesus Christ. Okay.
It's
Damn.
a ridiculous tradition, but there you go.
Oh no, what if he oh no, the king misspoke. Oh God. We're now
Yeah,
gonna have to
just every
spend
now and
300 billion towards, making the city more approachable to pigeons or something. I don't know.
Yeah, something like that. He also does this mandatory little speech about togetherness, the challenges we face,
Mhm.
blah 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 blah.
Is it like the Dutch, I mean the English Queen, where they do it in front of like a golden piano, or is there a bit more tasteful?
No, it's not very tasteful.
Oh, okay.
He used to drive up into a golden chariot, but that recently has been too controversial because there are a lot of depictions of people of color kneeling and bringing spices to white people and those kind of depictions. So
Oh.
I'm not sure if he's gonna dust off his golden chariot right now.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we're looking at it right now. Yeah, I mean, this is definitely one way to influence public perception of you as a monarch, I guess.
Yeah, but it's sort of a relic from the 18th century. That thing. He also has like the old what's it called, the cloak that the Bonapartist king of the Netherlands used to wear. So he has all kinds of old artifacts which he dons for that occasion.
Well,
I
I
mean,
guess,
kings
ba
gotta love him, right?
yeah, I mean, based acceleration is king, doing as much as possible to make people be like, what the fuck? Should this be allowed? Should this be allowed? Like, yeah, I guess.
Yeah, but bear in mind, it's not for the people who are only listening. It's not just black people. They're just a small part of the depictions on that thing. You also
Mhm.
have people with gaudy hats. The 18th century wigs and musket outfits. It's kind of weird to see, really.
Bit like some LARPy stuff going on there, I guess.
Yeah, you see that a lot in Europe when you travel around.
Mhm.
Palace guards looking like you know.
Yeah, I see what you mean. There's a lot of LARPing that goes on in Europe, I guess. That's one of the things I'll give the Americans credit for, I guess. No, there was the big military parade that Trump had. I'm not sure. It's kind of even there, I guess. But yeah,
Yeah.
LARPing not great, I guess. So yeah, like apart from the climate bit there, and then the housing things and the taxation that we talked a bit about,
Mhm.
um, are there any other like remarkable things or like especially surprising or disappointing
Oh,
or
yeah.
good parts about the budget?
So, being recognition of the emergency status of the climate change problem is the big thing here, I think. But also organized crime is also budgeted for, increased budget for, which means that they consider that a crisis right now in the Netherlands. Some people would make the case that the Netherlands is actually a narco state, and well, this is just one more indication of just that. So they're going to budget more for that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one thing, and including that is nice, good news for progressives, which means they budgeted for extra access, better access for uh, legal healthcare for poor people.
Mm-hmm.
That's good too. Consider that an emergency too. And only very slight improvements for the housing crisis.
Yeah, I
And the
see.
big absentee here is healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
No movement on that issue at all.
All right, so if we were to like make like three categories, something especially disappointing, something decent, moderate, and then something great, we have on the disappointing category the budgets on healthcare. On the moderately category, we have the slight changes to housing policy, and then on the good part, the good surprising part, we have the climate change stuff.
Yeah, but don't forget organized crime.
And there was organized crime bit as well. Exactly. And
Yeah.
people are how do they feel about that specifically? Is it like a big thing in Dutch like discourse and stuff like that? Discussions on how to tackle
Yeah,
organized crime?
two months ago, one of the darling investigative reporters of in the Netherlands who did a lot of work in crime, solving cold cases, actually making progress on certain figureheads in organized crime, got ruthlessly executed while walking out of a TV studio. So that really made that front and center in the news. And there's
Mm-hmm.
also strong investigative indications that certain provinces in the Netherlands where a lot of ecstasy is produced, most of the city government is in the pocket of organized criminals.
Mm-hmm. I see.
Uh,
Um,
even seeing indications of cartel activity, that fever dream of the Republican Party happening in the Netherlands.
yeah. Do you think you could send me the name of that reporter, and do you also think you could elaborate a bit more about that situation in the Netherlands and potential causes that you see for that, or yeah, just bunch of stuff relating to that, I guess.
Um, well, there are no real reliable figures on that, but there are huge estimates of the size of the drug trade in the Netherlands. So it is a public secret that we're the biggest producer of ecstasy and MDMA related drugs, but we're also a huge hub for the drug trade. Well, I haven't really prepared anything on this, to be honest,
Mhm.
but it's uh, it's a large part of Dutch society, the drug trade and this problem.
Mhm.
Um,
I
so
see.
yeah, there's a lot of it going around. It's pretty normal to see in the kind of cities that you live in. A lot of people driving around in a lot of fancy cars that would be hard to honestly earn
Mhm.
at the ages that they are. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, maybe what we could do is we could schedule a specific discussion on that
yeah,
for
sure.
some other time, and then we can make sure that we have material for everything we talk about. Um,
Yeah, definitely. The only thing I can speak on is that there's this debate whether we're officially a narco state, and according to some definitions, we are. So
oh well,
there's that.
that's not great, I guess. Yeah, so yeah, we'll look into that, and we'll get something prepared for that. But at the moment, those were the three main things that I had planned, or yeah, that we were going to talk about. Do you have anything else on your mind, or?
No, not really. I'll also send you the current polling going around.
Mhm.
I could quickly talk you through that, but I'm not sure if that's useful for this segment.
The current polling on what particularly?
The current seats in the parliament
Oh,
going around.
yeah. I mean, we could take a look at that. The first thing I have to say about this is based trans flag color that we have going on here with the pink and the light blue and the white. I mean, yeah, it looks pretty good to me. I don't know what else needs to be said, but yeah. All right, go. Let us know what's happening.
So how to read this is the left column is when we would include this guy Pieter Omzicht in the polling as having his own separate party, which you can see here he would have 25 seats.
Mm-hmm.
And the VVD, which is the ruling party, 34. The other two parties who are in current government are D66. And right now, this one is not on the polls because they had, let's see, where are they? Oh, yeah, ChristenUnie, not abbreviated for some reason at 5. So those are the 4 parties. So as you could see, Peter Omzicht would run the second largest party in the Netherlands
I see.
right
So
now.
I'm curious. So how is this? I'm not quite sure what this means. So there's middle column here with plus or minuses and stuff, and then there is the right column. So which one is what are we supposed to be
Yeah.
looking
So
at here?
all the way to the left is when you include Peter Omzicht as having his own party. He would poll at 25 seats. Then the second seat is if he wouldn't have his own party, then you would just have the numbers there. That
Oh,
would be
okay.
the poll if he wouldn't start his own party.
Mm-hmm.
That next column, creating the pink in your transgender flag,
Uh-huh.
is difference. Should Peter Omzicht start his own party, so you can sort of see where he would get his voters from.
I see.
That's the liberal parties, that's the Social Democrats, the Socialists. So he would take seats from both the left and the right.
So this Peter person, they are a what would they be ideologically?
Enlightened centrist, I would
Oh,
guess.
for fuck's sake. Okay.
Now he's part of that Christian Democratic Party, CDA abbreviated. And while they are centrists, but they're only strong ideological deviance from all the other parties is that they stand for more local sovereignty. Peter himself has said that he wants parliamentarians to be more rooted in the region instead of in political parties. And he wants to have a cabinet apart from the political parties, making it the case that political parties will no longer provide ministers and secretaries of state, at least not based on the lists and elections.
Yeah. I think
So
it's interesting that he's currently part of the CDA party, but by these predictions here, it seems like he wouldn't take any voters from the CDA party should he branch off and do his own thing. So yeah.
yeah, that is. Let's see. Well,
Am I
he
looking at
didn't
the right
explain
one
the
here?
far
Or?
right column, and that's the one where they would. That's the difference between the most recent election results, because we had election results this year.
Okay, so the furthest right one is the middle row is kind of just like that's not the
Yeah.
most important one. The one to the right is the one. Okay,
So
so
CDA would lose 9 seats based
okay,
on their performance in the formation process and the most recent scandals. 9 seats.
okay.
Yeah.
All right, yeah, that makes sense.
But that's a lot to take in right now. I understand, because in the Netherlands, I think 35, 39 parties run the elections. That's a lot of them. We have a lot of to choose from.
Yeah, it looks like it. Oh my God. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's some interesting numbers there. Some based colors as well. But that's yeah, that's the main things that I had in mind really.
Excellent, excellent.
All right.
All right then. I will talk to you soon because I have to go as well right now.
All right,
Duty
excellent.
calls and all that.
I see. Yeah, and then we'll plan some other day to talk about the other things we didn't have a chance to talk about today. And yeah, excellent.
Sounds excellent. Good to
All
talk to you again. And I don't have anything to shout out,
right.
but yeah, except those links that you're going to share. So take
Excellent.
care now, everyone.
All right, you too. Bye bye.
All right, bye bye.